And welcome to Military Matters Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
You notice I have to give him the cue. We're still not there. We're not synced yet, but we will be. So we're doing something new. As you can see, we're doing a video. We're going to put this on YouTube, and we will be sharing this on our Facebook page as well. We just want, that's a conversation that Jack and I have had about this podcast is we're doing really, I think we're covering very important stories, and we want to reach as many people as we possibly can with these stories. And this is a prime example of a story that needs to be heard. This is a story that is not when you brought this story to me, I was like, how am I not reading about this everywhere? Special Forces soldier and his son extradited to a country with a terrible humanitarian record.
This is the thing, not to, pat Military Matters on the back too much or too hard here, but I am very happy that we're able to cover some of these stories that don't get the kind of attention they deserve. Like the story we did about Mark Leshikar a few episodes back. The last one, just the previous episode we did about Mike Taylor. These stories have not been aired out as they should have, in long form, in detail. So I'm glad that we can do that here.
100%. And Jack, tell us a little bit about who we're going to talk to today and why our listeners should stick around, because this is interesting.
Yeah, today we're going to talk to Lamia Taylor. She is originally from Lebanon. Mike Taylor, who was Special Forces, he was deployed to Lebanon on the first mobile training team, actually, over there in 1983. And I should have asked, I'm not sure if they met while he was on that first deployment or if he met going back to Lebanon later on, but they met in 1983. Lamia's family accepted Mike Taylor and they were wedded, and they have 3 children, Peter, Oliver, and Rudy. And of course, Mike and Peter were just extradited to Japan. They're cooling their heels in a Japanese prison right now. So I really appreciate Lamia, taking a little bit of time to talk to us. I mean, of course, she's distraught about this situation. How could you not be, with her husband and her son, in a foreign prison? So that's who we're going to talk to today.
100%. Jack, thank you for putting this all together. And folks, this is our interview, our conversation with Lamia Taylor. Could you talk to us a little bit about, did you get a chance to listen to the episode?
The last one?
Yes, the one that we did about.
The one you did with Rocco, and yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
As you were listening to that episode, can you tell me a little bit about some of the thoughts and feelings that you were experiencing, hearing the story encapsulated the way that we did? Actually,
I was very happy with that podcast, and I wish that it would go out to more media, because I felt that Rocco described Michael as who he really is, unlike the media. All they talk about is the Utah case with him, or, the guy's done a lot for his country and for the community. And I was also very happy to hear our attorney, Paul Kelly, also talking about the injustice and all this. No, I thought, why hasn't the media picked up on this? Why it's been a weird thing with the media with this case, because I thought it was huge, because I know that in the treaty, the treaty between Japan and the United States, you really don't have to extradite your citizens, and they chose to. And why wasn't anybody questioning every time we were hitting walls? So, but I was really, really happy with that podcast, because it showed what Michael is really about. He's not this bad guy or this. He just has a lot of goodness in him.
I feel like Mike and Peter's story also kind of got lost this year with everything else going on, as you mentioned, with COVID, all the wild stuff going on in Washington, D.C. with President Trump and the election. I mean, I think it just kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah.
But nevertheless, I'm equally as surprised that this didn't make headlines. In fact, when Jack brought the story, or we were discussing the different stories we're going to be working on this season. And when he proposed this one, I thought to myself, well, what am I missing here? Because I feel like I should have heard about this. Like, this should have been bigger news. Special Forces soldier extradited to a country with the reputation that Japan has incurred. Why isn't this everywhere? Why, what, aside from, yes, there's definitely been some news detractors, but what other reasons do you feel that this hasn't made the headlines that you feel it should have?
That's a big question. I don't know. I don't know. There's something that we're missing. I don't know. Maybe, well, I don't know. Maybe there was a deal made. I have no idea because, I researched extradition and it's clear extradition is for espionage, murders, sexual assaults, billions of. This is a non-violent case. But the max they would serve is 3 years. It's not that they're going for a decade. That's why I just can't put my finger on why. I'm thinking, Japan was clearly humiliated and they wanted to save face and they must have told them, we just want them. That's my theory. I don't know. That's my opinion.
When we recorded those interviews with Rocco and with Mr. Kelly, Mike and Peter were still awaiting extradition. They were still in the United States. By the time we released the podcast, they had been extradited.
Yeah.
Where does the case stand now? Well, first off, have you heard from Mike and Peter at all? And where is the case currently standing in Japan?
Okay, I haven't heard directly. There's no phones. And the system in Japan, the first 23 days, they are kept in solitary confinement and they are interrogated. I don't know if it's daily by the prosecutors, and their lawyer is allowed to visit them each 25 minutes. So there's no phone calls. I wrote 2 letters to Peter through the embassy. I did get a call from the embassy the next day they arrived, which made me feel good, from someone at the embassy that he went to see them. And, they will we'll check on them at least once a month. That's what he said. And, but we won't know anything till after those 23 days are over, because I think this is when they will indict them. So it's been frustrating not to hear, because when they were in Norfolk, I used to hear from them 6-7 times a day. And now not to hear from them is really, but I just, people tell me, how do you do it? What can I do? All I can do is pray and hope that they are treated well. And I believe they are. I don't think the Japanese want to bring any scrutiny on them, especially with 2 US citizens that were sent by the government. I think they really want to prove to the world that they're not as bad as they're portrayed. That's all I know.
In the lead up to this event, from your lawyer has exhausted several avenues as well as you have through the government, trying to get somebody from our side to do something about this. Tell me about that experience, and what have you been told in regards to why nothing could be done? Okay.
The same answer from everyone. Oh, we can't get involved. It's in the courts. That's not true. Yeah, it was in the courts. But at the end of the day, the State Department makes that decision. Mm-hmm. So we wanted them, our senators and our congresswoman, who I sent several messages. They ended up calling me, but it was like a week before they were extradited. This is what I wanted them to reach out to the State Department and just get some answers. Why are we sending, in the middle of a pandemic, 2 US citizens across the globe on a non-violent crime? Would Michael have, part of his lung missing? Why? But it was always the same answer. It's in the courts. We can't get involved.
And even Secretary Pompeo didn't want to get involved, as I understand it.
No, nothing. I think Well, the State Department wouldn't even meet with our lawyers. You know, when they made when they ruled, it seems like it's normal for them to meet with our lawyers so they wouldn't even get responses for their emails that they were sending. It was just hush hush. I mean, you know how they were going to extradite them. I don't know if you know that they took the decision on a Wednesday morning. I believe it was October 28th. They didn't let our lawyers know till 5 p.m. of that night. And there was a plane waiting the next day at noon. It was like they were just going to, you know, I'll never forget this phone call that I got at 5 a.m. from my lawyer. He said, I was going, we didn't expect, we were told that it's under control. They're not going to be extradited. All these lawyers have done extradition cases, and they had said this is not an extraditable case. And you know, the judge, you know, we filed, the lawyers were scrambling to file a motion to stay. And the judge, that's why they stayed here longer. But it felt like so quickly they wanted to scoop them. It was just weird. Just weird, you know.
Can you tell me about the last conversation you had with your husband and your son?
Was the day before they left, because they had a feeling they were going to be picked up. It was not from the media here, from the Japanese media. On Saturday, they sent an email to our lawyer and said that the prosecutors left Japan Saturday. And the reason they planned it that day, because they knew on Friday, Michael and Peter were going to get their second vaccine. So Sunday, nothing happened. They called me and, they were ready to go. They wanted to get this over with. They've had it. They've been rotting in this county jail, and they wanted to go, and no matter what, just, have a closure. I felt that way too, as much as I was so petrified for all these months for Japan. I felt like, let them go. Let's have a closure. We're not looking at a decade, and they've already served here, and hopefully they will count the time they served here, and they're going to realize that my son has nothing to do with it. My son has been really victimized, and not getting bail for a young man with no criminal history. Where's he going to go? But, prosecutor chose to portray him as Peter is a college grad. He's into finance. He was just, brought into this, I think, because of his father, and maybe they thought they can get to his father through him. I don't know. But my heart goes out to my son. That was the most difficult. But he's been such a champion throughout this whole thing. He's a very positive young man. But I know for Michael, it must be eating him up every day, having his son there. I know that he tried to take me, but leave my son here, but it didn't work.
Well, I'm amazed that you've held out, is been as strong as you have. I mean, like you said, you don't have any other choice, I suppose. But Peter and Mike are going to come home, and Peter will have some good stories to tell his grandkids. I have no doubt about it.
Oh, you bet. He's a storyteller. I hope you'll talk to Peter when he's out, because he's pretty special. I know I'm a mom, but he really is special.
Lamia, as I've shared this story with so many people, I get a lot of questions. And I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest questions has been about your relationship and your feelings towards your husband in regards to how everything went. Are you angry? Are you hurt? Some folks kind of see this as your husband kind of pulled Peter into a situation. How do you feel about that?
I'd rather not comment on this. It's a personal, private issue, and I'd rather not comment.
I understand. Sure. I had to ask, because I'll be honest with you, that's a big question out there.
I'm sure everybody's asking, but I prefer to keep it within the family.
Perfectly understandable. As we go forward, there's a lot that's happening behind closed doors in another country. Can you tell me about how you're working through this, and what do you feel the next steps are?
Well, all I can do is speculate at this point because I really don't know the details. But I'm hoping that they will get whatever information they want to get from them. And I know Michael and Peter are going to be very straightforward. I mean, the story is already out and they know. And I'm hoping for a quick process because things can linger in Japan. But the one comfort in this is that in the treaty, they cannot bring additional charges. Because, you remember what happened with Gon. They kept, giving him bail, then bringing more charges, then arrest him. Here they cannot. This is what they're going to deal with. So, and also I'm hoping that the Japanese wouldn't want it to linger because they have the Olympics coming. And I believe it's still going. So I think they'd rather focus on that. So that's my hope. I don't know if it will happen, but my hope is that will be done in a couple of months. They will sentence them. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I really don't know. Maybe they'll be happy that they're cooperating and will be lenient to them. That's my hope. But I don't know much right now. I wish I could, but I'm just going to be patient until those 23 days are over, and then maybe we can have more information. But it's very hard to be cut off from them completely. Especially, again, I keep thinking about my son. Michael is a tough guy. Peter is a tough guy, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have the experience that Michael has. But still, he handled Norfolk really, really good. He was always, even the lawyer said, he's a dream client. Never complains. He said, Mom, it is what it is. I'm going to make the best of it.
I can imagine it's really hard for you to kind of find your footing in this whole case, especially since from the very beginning you were told this is the chances of this of happening really low, and then it does happen. Trying to figure out what's going to go down now based on what other people are saying, it just feels like everything is possible now, and it's just hard to say what the possibilities could be.
Exactly. We don't know. All we can do is hope. All I can do is hope. I'm hoping it'll be quick. We'll see. Yeah.
Jack, I felt like you were going to say something. I didn't mean to step on you.
Oh, no, not at all. No. I just was telling you that all I can do is hope for a quick, finish. Like, I feel like at least now I can see a light at the end of the tunnel. However that light, how far it is, I don't know. But again, maximum is 3 years. I'm told that nobody, especially first-time offenders, nobody serves 3 years. They counting what they served here, what they're sitting there. I'm thinking maybe it could be a matter of a few months. Hey, I'll take it. At least I know there is an end.
You mentioned the media has portrayed Mike and Peter in certain ways. Definitely Mike in some negative light. We talked about that in the podcast. That, yes, nobody has a perfect history. Nobody's been an angel their entire life. Everybody has gotten themselves into some issues. But in this particular case, they took Mike's past and just really put a spotlight on certain parts and not others that were more positive. What would you like what do you want everyone to know about Mike that the media has gotten wrong?
Okay. Number one, Mike loves his country. I met him back in 1983, and he wouldn't call this country United States. He would call it the greatest country on God's earth. This is always how he describes it. And I remember we would be in Lebanon with family and friends, and if anyone would say anything negative about this country, he would just blast them. Loves his country, put his life on the line for his country. Even when we were married, we had kids, he was doing some pretty, dangerous work for his country. Why this is not brought up? Then he coached football. He He took care of kids who couldn't afford the tuition just to have a chance to go to a school and play sport. He donated football fields. There is a football field that bears his name, the Taylor Field. There's so much. Yes, Utah happened, but also the Utah experience taught me that pleading guilty doesn't always mean you're guilty. Sometimes you have no choice. And I believe this is what happened with Michael. He was kept 14 months in a county jail in Utah where he couldn't be outside. I remember when he came out, he was gray. 14 months, no trial in sight. And who was postponing the trial? It's the government. Our lawyers were ready. They kept when they saw that, they made a deal with him. So I learned, don't believe someone pleading guilty that he's guilty. When your money is taken away, when you're kept 1,000 miles away from your family, when you can't go out, when you stop being able to pay legal fees, what choice do you have? Then make a deal. I'm telling you, I learned this system. When I came from Lebanon, I always felt this comfort that I'm in a legal system. Good, I'm coming out from the war there where there was, chaos. But I don't wish on anyone to be entangled in the justice system here. It's not pretty.
Do you have
Anyway, go ahead.
Do you have any advice for anybody who would find themselves God forbid anybody found themselves in a similar situation, but if you could do anything differently, what would you do?
I knew with this Afghanistan contract, I knew Michael was not guilty. I knew it. I mean, it was really what do you say? A fishing
expedition.
Thank you. My English still not. I always. It was, but I kept hoping, and our attorneys were very, very confident with the trial. But now thinking back, he should have pled from the beginning, made a deal with them, and avoid these 14 months that really, took so much out of him, demeaned him. He was disappointed. And I think right now he's disappointed. And he said it, I think, to someone, that he feels betrayed. It just focus on the good. Everyone, we all have our bad. We all have our flaws. And if people don't focus on the good of others, nobody would get along, especially someone who served his country. Like I told you, this is what he referred to, greatest country on God's earth.
Lamia, I wanted to ask, I think there's the other question is, Mike and Peter are where they are right now because allegedly they helped Carlos Ghosn escape Japan. They, Mike, seems to have gave Carlos his freedom. I don't know, has Carlos Ghosn done anything to try to help Mike, get him some lawyers in Japan? He seems like he has a lot more resources.
Not that I know of, Jack. Not that I know of. I don't know. I have no contact. I know that our lawyers here have been working for a month with lawyers there. But I don't know how it came about. I have no contact at all with the person.
Does that frustrate you? Are you upset with Carlos in any way? Do you feel like he's responsible for this?
No, I don't. It doesn't even. I don't even go there. Like it's the last of my worries right now.
Yeah.
My focus is for Michael and Peter to get a fair treatment and come home soon. That's all. I can't. My mind already is going a million places and thinking I want to focus on the positive. And what's done is done. I need to move forward, because for months I kept looking back and thinking why, and no more of this. I have to move forward, to keep going, to stay. I have a son here. I have Rudy. I know Peter's biggest concern is me. He said, "Mom, I'm fine. I worry about you." So that's why I was telling Jack, I'm trying to stay strong for them. Not easy, but I have my faith. Thank God, I rely on my faith a lot. So.
Well, you sound very strong. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I would sound the way you do right now if I were in your
It's just
shoes.
you caught me at a good days. There are days where I'm just weeping nonstop. Yeah. But I don't know. Since they left to Japan, I have the strength that I didn't have before, because I feel like we're going to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. Well, we weren't getting anywhere here. That killed me.
I think before they left, you had so many things in the air, so many possibilities and variables. Anything could happen. Now that they're there, there's only a couple of things that can happen, and,
exactly.
and they all end with them coming home at some point.
Exactly. I mean, I know from Peter, for example, he kept being said, oh, it's under control. We thought they'll be home in October. Ever since the extradition ruling came, he said, Mom, I don't expect anymore. He stopped, calling the lawyers, just because he said, I'm just going to be here and see what happens. And I understand. We were told these lawyers have dealt with extradition cases. They were stunned.
Jack, do you have any other comments or questions before we wrap it up?
I don't think so right now. I think, Lamia, I really appreciate your time and, fleshing.
Thank you for having me. It's really comforting talking to you guys, and nice, especially Jack being an ex-SF. So I'm sure you feel with Michael and.
Yeah, I know. And I've had so many phone calls with Mike. I got to know him a little bit. Talking to Rudy also, really nice guys. And, I'm sorry this is happening.
Thank you, Jack. And, anytime you have any question, feel free to contact me. You have my email and.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again for all of your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right, folks, that was Lamia Taylor, the wife of Mike Taylor, mother of Peter Taylor. We covered that story last episode. Wow, that was powerful. I mean, you could see that this is something. It's interesting. We read a lot of stories, we do a lot of podcasts, but when you talk to the family of the people affected, I think that brings it home.
It certainly, it literally puts a face on the story. So much of this, when you're reporting it, involves looking through legal paperwork and documents and indictments and researching what has been written about the case previously and everything else. But then, I talking to Mike, talking to Lamia, I've spoken to Mike's friends, I've spoken to some of Mike's other son, Rudy. These are real people. They're real people, and they're really going through something that's very dramatic and painful. And you see it for what it is. And you see the human cost and the human toll that it all takes on people.
100%. Jack, we touched on it during our talk with Lamia, but I want to ask you. You've talked with Mike on several occasions. You've gotten to know him. She describes the guy when she met him, super patriotic. He kept, referred to this as the greatest country on the planet, a wonderful place. But he has gone through so many run-ins with the government that have ended with him on the short end of the stick. Mm-hmm. How does he feel about the country now? I mean, is some of that shine worn off?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think he is patriotic, and I think he loves America. He's loyal to our country. I would never think anything else about Mike. But yes, he is bitter about the justice system in this country. He is not a huge fan of the Department of Justice. He thinks that they strong arm people. He feels that they've strong armed him. He feels that, that people's constitutional rights aren't being protected, including his and Peter's, that their rights have not been safeguarded, and that, they essentially got thrown to the wolves. So, yeah, he is jaded and bitter about the justice system, or from his point of view, the lack of justice in the system.
So now I guess we're just waiting on Japan. We're waiting to figure out what they're going to do with them. They could do time served. They could just, like, what you've done so far means nothing to us. We're going to give you the max. But I think that Lamia hit on a great point. At this point, at this point with the case in regards to Japan, how they're going to handle it, it's not in their interest to hold these two men longer than they absolutely have to. And it doesn't seem in their best interest to apply some of the more brutal conditions and circumstances that other foreigners have experienced in their prisons with all the publicity that is encapsulated this case. Does that theory have water, or do you think that Japan just simply will not care and will do what they want to do?
Well, as we talked about, this case hasn't received maybe as much publicity as it would have had we not lived in the world of COVID and President Trump and the election and everything else that was going on at that time. But still, the Japanese government does not want to be shamed on the international stage. And if they did use some of those more coercive methods that Amnesty International and others have covered in the Japanese prison system, where they're sleep deprived, where they are interrogated all day by lawyers, where they're kept in cold cells without that aren't heated, without any clothes to wear. I think if that stuff comes out, that Mike and Peter are treated like that, it shames the Japanese government pretty profoundly. And of course, Mike and Peter, when they do get out, if they're mistreated, I'm sure they're gonna say so. They're not gonna hold back on that. So yes, I do think it probably plays into how the Japanese are going to handle this case. And I mean, we can only hope that they know there's a lot of eyeballs on what they're doing right now. And, hopefully they proceed accordingly.
I hope so, too. For the sake of this family, I want to see this thing come to an end. Folks, I'm Rod Rodriguez. That was Jack Murphy. We just want to thank Lamia Taylor again for all of her time and for talking with us about this really sensitive topic that is very much real to her and her family. Folks, you can check out that entire episode that we did on Mike Taylor and Pete Taylor, the circumstances that brought them to the situation with Japan, how this whole thing unfolded. Jack Murphy did an amazing job tracking down the story, breaking it open. Military Matters podcast, of course, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. We just got listed on Pandora, folks, so you can listen to it in the car. You can just tell your Pandora, hey, subscribe to Military Matters podcast, and it's going to do it for you. You can find us on Twitter. You can find Jack Murphy at Jack Murphy RGR on Twitter. There is never a dull moment on the Jack Murphy Twitter page. I enjoy following you because the stories and the things that you put up there are just I often have to wonder, I'm like, is he being sarcastic? And 90% of the time, you are.
75.
75? I go with the 75. You can find me on Twitter at RodPodRod. There you'll find my just random thoughts on the world. And if you're a UFC fight fan, you'll see a lot of UFC MMA updates on there as well. You can find the Military Matters podcast. We have an Instagram page, and that would be Stripes MM. Wow, I should probably know all of our handles off the top of my head, but you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Stripes.com is where we live. And if you use promo code podcast, you're going to get 50% off your digital subscription. But the podcast, always free to listen to, just anywhere you listen to podcasts. Jack, do you got anything for us before we go?
No, I think that's it. I just, remind people, please check out the previous episode of Military Matters, which really goes in depth onto this case about Mike and Peter Taylor. We talked to one of his old teammates who's a JSOC Sergeant Major, retired, and his lawyer. So we really explore all the angles of this case, and I hope you guys will go give it a listen.
100%. And if you like it, leave us a 5-star review if you think we earned it. All right, folks, I'm Rod Rodriguez. That's Jack Murphy, and we are out.